there's no better feeling in the world for me personally, I guess. Getting called out in the middle of the night, you're tired and you're messy, but you got the calf out and they're both alive and they're looking at you and the farmer's so happy and thankful. And that's the best feeling in the world. But yeah, there's definitely some nights, 2 o'clock in the morning, dodging deer. I'd rather be in my bed.
Hi, guys, and welcome to the House Call Vet Cafe podcast. I'm Dr. Eve Harrison. I'm a full-time integrative concierge house call veterinarian in Los Angeles, and I help other vets to build their unique mobile practices on their terms. This podcast is for and by house call and mobile veterinarians, so it is meant to give our community a platform to connect, to share our stories, to lift each other up, and to support each other. Most of us work solo as lone wolves, right? So for me, it's been really powerful to be able to physically hear the voices of my colleagues from all over the world and to get a chance to feel that we truly are part of a community of very real other human beings who get it. While you may be alone in that little bubble of your own vehicle when you're on the road seeing patients, I welcome you to join our community by tuning into our own podcast when you're on your way to your next house call. Whether you're a super experienced house call vet with 30 years of experience, you're a brand new prospective house call vet just looking to get started, or you're house call curious, there will be something for you in this podcast. Each episode, you will hear interviews from other mobile veterinarians just like yourself who are doing unique and innovative things, vets who are sharing their stories, their struggles and challenges, and you can also look forward to hearing valuable information and perspectives from specialists and experts outside of our micro niche. And finally, if becoming a house call veterinarian is something that you've been thinking about exploring, or you're looking for some extra support getting your own mobile practice to feel more profitable and sustainable for you, check out the information in the show notes about my course and our above and beyond supportive private community for members only, plus our monthly group coaching sessions within the House Call Vet Academy. You can also check out my free public Facebook group, which is also called the House Call Vet Cafe, the same name as this podcast, and which is a warm and cozy community for mobile vets to support each other in professional and personal development, in creative entrepreneurship, and in friendship. So thank you guys for spending time with me today. Let's dive into the episode.
Hey everyone, we have a really awesome guest on the show today that I've been really excited about talking to for a while because what she does is so vastly different from what I do and what so many of us do that I just can't wait for you guys to hear from her. So we have with us Dr. Gabrielle Wimmer, who has been an upstate New Yorker for her whole life, born and raised in central New York. Dr. Gabrielle went to undergrad at Houghton College in Western New York, Cornell University College of Veterinary Medicine, care of 2022 in the Finger Lakes, and now practices in the Mohawk Valley. She knew that she wanted to be a veterinarian from a young age and has always had a love for farm animals. She now sees a variety of species: cattle, horses, sheep, goats, ducks, chickens, llamas, alpacas, pigs, deer, etc. And she sees all of those critters as an associate at a pretty traditional mixed farm animal ambulatory practice. And she also does some small animal spay neuter relief on the side and some small animal at-home euthanasia. Dr. Gabrielle enjoys living in a quiet rural area with her husband and their 3 cats, Mary, Lucy, and Tumnus. Adorable. Okay, welcome, Gabrielle. I'm so happy to have you here with us, Doc. If I can start out the conversation by asking, when you're on the road to seeing all those creatures, what are you snacking on in the car? Oh, that's a good one. So my snacks kind of vary, I guess, by what's in the house. If I make it to Trader Joe's, which is a pretty far drive either direction, I usually have a pretty good selection of any number of good stuff to snack on there. But if I don't, the thing I'm consuming, I guess, most of the time is chocolate milk. So it's a good afternoon pick-me-up. That's awesome. I really love the Trader Joe's snacks. Do you have like a particular one that you gravitate towards? I really like, they're not healthy at all, but I think it might be seasonal, but they have like a brownie bark that has caramel on it and I think cookie pieces, and it like makes my fillings hurt, but it's really good. That sounds absolutely delicious. I've never seen that at Trader Joe's, but they really have good snacks and sweets and things like that. Like one of my favorite, speaking of bark, is the peppermint bark that they have. It comes in like a tin. Have you seen that? So yeah, I could go through one of those probably in a couple of days.
Oh, yeah.
Like give me 3 house calls, I'll be done with the box. Right? Each. Amazing. So I would love to know if you could tell me a little bit about how you got into ambulatory practice and what your journey's been like since graduating or even maybe before that. I would just love to hear kind of how you got onto the path that you're on right now.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So, like was in my bio, born and raised in upstate New York my whole life. It's where all my family is and where my in-laws are. And so my husband and I knew that's where we wanted to be settled. He's a teacher, so he works in New York as well, obviously. And so we were looking for places to live that would allow for me to do large animal stuff because that's what my passion has always been. I didn't grow up on a farm, but all of my friends did. And so I spent a lot of time playing with calves and playing and stuff I probably shouldn't. But that's all right. So, yeah, when it came to areas that would work for both of our jobs, it seemed like ambulatory was probably going to be the way to go for me since there's so few actual large animal brick and mortar hospital practices that are around. There's a good number of them, but ambulatory is certainly much more common, especially up here in dairy country. So that's kind of how I got settled into it. I shadowed a large animal ambulatory vet when I was in high school, and then I guess never looked back. So it was always something that I had a passion for, and I'm so thankful that I'm able to do what I love every single day.
That's amazing. Have you been doing mixed animal ambulatory work since you graduated?
Yes, I have. So the practice that I'm currently working at is the job that I took right out of vet school. So I graduated in 2022, and I've been here the whole time. And yeah, it's great. Like I said, that long list of species, we see all sorts of stuff, truly mixed, and then both from a production and from a pet standpoint. So, Tuesday I might be seeing some backyard production pigs, and then Friday I might be doing hoof trims on a house pig near the city, right? So it's all sorts of stuff. And same for sheep and goats too. Might be doing preg checks on a goat dairy one day, and the next day I'm looking at a backyard sheep and doing vaccines and routine herd checks and stuff. So crazy variety, which is what I really like.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds absolutely amazing. I have a couple questions that are coming up for me. One, doing kind of farm animal in the more rural areas, I don't really know how much traveling you're having to do. How many farm calls can you fit into a day usually?
Ooh, that's a great question. So it really depends on where we are scheduled at. So if I have farms that are close to each other, I can usually get a few dairy herd checks in a morning or before early afternoon. But there's certainly some days, just the way the schedule works out, where I might be driving an hour more in between appointments. We try to limit that, of course, but that's just part of it. So it varies so much seasonally for us, but I would say typically I'm stopping at anywhere from 4 to maybe 6 or 7 places routinely scheduled in a day. And whether that's stopping at one place to look at one horse or that's stopping at a dairy to, ultrasound and rectal 100 cows, yeah, that's probably about how many.
How long does it actually take to ultrasound 100 cows?
Well, it depends how they're lined up, or if you're waiting for them to come off the parlor, or if you gotta catch them. But, yeah, it all depends. Sometimes you're there for a couple hours.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, that totally makes sense. I think that sort of 4 to 7 is pretty aligned with, like, a small animal house call vet kind of going to do,
Mm.
like, the variability that just comes with it. 7 is a lot for me, like, if I'm
Mhm.
doing 5 or 6, like, at the end of the day, I'm like, "Holy shit, are we done yet?"
Yeah,
And
same.
I've also kind of, like, spoiled at this point in time, like, I haven't had to see really more than, like, 3 or 4 patients a day for a long time, but I know a lot of house call vets, like, especially if you're, like the volume and you like to really be very busy and things like that. 6 to 7, even some do 8 periodically. I mean, that's a lot, but yeah, it's pretty comparable, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it does make sense, yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I really do love the variability that you have going on in the mixed animal world and that there's pets, but there's also, like you're doing kind of larger scale stuff and seeing many, many animals at some
Mhm.
visits. It's really, really interesting. And the other question that I had that sort of came up for me is when you're just out of school, as you were when you started, the thing that's really, really unique about house call and mobile ambulatory practices, you don't have a whole team with you typically. You're like I don't know, were you going out solo in the beginning? How did you navigate the practicalities of becoming a vet when you first graduated and went straight into what may be solo practice now. I don't know if it is or isn't for you right now, but I'd love to hear.
Yeah, so I guess I never really thought about it any other way because this is all that I've known. But yeah, certainly if you were in a traditional brick and mortar practice setting, there's people around that you can easily talk to in person or grab or ask a question to. So yeah, not have that. And at our practice, we typically don't have assistants either. So a lot of times it's just a doctor in the truck. So I will say that shout out to Cornell. They did a really good job preparing me, I believe, for the workforce. And so we did a lot of externships. I did a lot of hands on stuff, and that was really helpful. But certainly, once I started this practice, I rode around in the truck with another vet for a while to see a variety of calls before going out on my own. But the benefit, and I honestly don't know how large animal vets did it back before we had cell phones everywhere, because usually I have help a phone call away or had help a phone call or a text away if I needed it. We don't always have the best cell service up here, but I have got a truck full of resources and stuff like that. And then it became a lot of, I guess, knowing where the limits of my knowledge were and being very upfront and honest with clients and saying, hey, you know what? I don't have the answer for you right now, but I'm going to go back. I'm going to look it up and I'm going to call you back. And then actually doing that, I think goes a long way because there's just so much stuff. You can't hold it all in your brain. And I'm sure it's the same with the small animal side. Sometimes you got to go back and look up your recommendation for whatever supplement or certain dosage of medication or, whatever. So yeah, then I guess eventually you get more comfortable, and then I went out on my own and had the truck and the cell phone always with me if I needed it to contact anyone. But yeah, definitely the first year out was a huge learning curve, and I learned so much, and I'm sure it's the same in any part of the field.
Yeah, I really love that you called out there's almost this pressure to pretend you know things that you don't know, especially when you're new and you're trying to like establish
Mhm.
confidence and your clients having confidence in you and you're like literally learning and
Exactly. And old farmers can see right through that BS. They know it.
I'm imagining, do you watch Yellowstone?
I don't. I tried to watch a little bit of it, and then it was just like so unrealistic to me. I don't know, but I should
Like
try to watch it again.
hilarious. It's all about, like, farmers and ranchers and things, and there's some, like, characters that sound just like these old farmers that are just like, "No bullshit." No,
Yeah,
like, just
yeah.
and they actually speaking of unrealistic, just in the last episode that I watched, it had, like, a long break between, like, this season and the previous one, I think because of some of the strikes
Mhm.
Hollywood and wherever, with the AI stuff, but they're back, and this episode that I just watched, they injected Banamine,
I am into a
I
horse.
I am into a horse that had been bit by a rattlesnake, and I was like, "Well, even I know that."
Yeah. So I guess this kind of goes into what probably this discussion will eventually head to. So the thing of it is, on the label for Banamine, it does say for intravenous or intramuscular use in horses. They have not taken it off the label. So I guess they're not wrong. And again, I am not a legal person in one way, shape, or form, but apparently it costs money to take it off or whatever. But yeah, don't ever use the Banamine. I am in a horse unless you want clostridial myositis or to end up in a hospital for a long, long time.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you because I was like, "I know you're not supposed to, I just didn't know what happened." So, okay.
Bad,
Str
bad,
yes,
bad stuff.
no thanks, don't need that.
And others, yeah, yeah. Horses
Other
need their necks.
Oh my
Mm.
gosh. But yeah, it's like your clients as an ambulatory vet, I imagine are very, very down to earth, real, like, and they probably, I think most humans appreciate an honest and humble approach from their veterinarian. But I think it sounds to me that the farmers that you're working with, not only would they prefer it, they wouldn't tolerate anything else.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I think that's a really cool thing that's like, it behooves us both for me to be really honest and open and humble and let you know if I don't know the answer.
Mhm.
Just, I'm gonna look it up and that's okay. I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. And as I've gone on, I find myself having to that less and less, of course. But certainly, yeah, when we're first, because you're the new vet on farm, you're the new grad, you have to establish that relationship with your producers, and it takes a while. It really does, especially in a field where historically, in the way it kind of trends, there's a lot of turnover. And so it's nice to be able over the years to build up these relationships again with these farmers and producers. So
It's really cool to hear about. I am really interested. You had mentioned that you might be able to share some resources for people who might be interested in small ruminant work. I'm one of those people, like, I'm primarily dogs and cats and an occasional exotic, and then I have a few goat patients. So I'm like frothing at the mouth to hear, like, tell me all the resources. What CE can people do? I know I'm not alone. Like, whenever I post pictures of my goat patients, people lose their minds. And I know they're like incredibly jealous, as they should be, because goats are freaking amazing. But yeah, like, can I ask you to sort of like dump your brain on like what are some good resources for people who want to delve into small ruminants, sheep, goat, alpaca? That's
yeah, definitely. And I do strongly recommend that anyone who is looking into doing these species, like you said, definitely get continuing education or look up some resources because, I mean, we all learned about them in vet school, but if it's been a little while, there's some key things that are important because they're a little bit different than our monogastric friends, of course. And so, as far as resources that I like, first of all, joining an organization like AABP or AASRP, so the bovine practitioners or small ruminant practitioners, is probably a really great place to start. The dues aren't that much. And once you're a member, there's a whole library worth of resources. And so AASRP and AABP are pretty closely related. So even if you do one or the other, you can usually access information from the other ones. And then at the AABP conference, they typically try to have small ruminant sessions as well. And so those I've found to be helpful. So I guess those are the organizations I would say. And then for information on cases or just trying to pick other vets' brains, I really do. I'm not a social media person, but I have found some of the Facebook groups to be really helpful. And so there's a bovine vet to vet, which often sometimes has small ruminant stuff on it. And there's also a vet to vet Facebook page that is specifically for small ruminants and camelids. So that one's it's so good. Like, even if I'm not posting any questions or not looking up any cases, like, I will just look through every couple of days and because then I see things in real life, I'm like, "Oh, so and so saw this and they treated it with this," and so I found those, yeah, super duper helpful, and there's no shame in posting on those if you are new to doing small ruminant medicine. Everyone tends to be really friendly and helpful there, so I really like that. I would stay away from any small ruminant group that wasn't just for vets. Just like with anything, well, anything really at all, but anything in the medical or veterinary medical field, you can kinda get in the weeds and kinda into the crazies into the Facebook group. So I would stick with for vets only. And then so that's super helpful. There's some other continuing education courses. I know that Dr. Meredith Jones Cook has some. So it is Large Animal Consulting and Education. And if you Google that, a bunch of stuff comes up. There's courses. It's race approved, so you can get CE credit hours. And there's all sorts of stuff from small ruminant parasites to lambing and kidding, blocked goats, calving, PUs, all sorts of stuff. It's just a complete wealth of information. So that's probably a great place to check out.
amazing. I also wanted to just sort of like, I know this is like a broad question, but like, can you tell us about some common issues with backyard pets and some tips and tricks that you might have learned over time? Or like, if someone's just really starting to dabble in seeing camelids, small ruminants, things like that, what can they look forward to and what can they expect to be like the bread and butter of that type of work?
Yeah, sure. So my area of knowledge is Northeast United States. So the things that I see commonly may not be stuff that people who are practicing out in the West or high up in the mountains or in the Southeast are seeing. So again, mine's pretty geographically restricted, but there's so many big things that we tend to deal with are parasites, both internal and external. and different things that are associated with that. So we have a lot of issues with meningeal worms, so P. tenuis, which is not something I understand from speaking with some colleagues out west is something that they see too often, but it is something that we see a lot here. It's carried by deer and the snails and the slugs, and we all remember that from parasitology, that life cycle. And so it gets into the aberrant host. And that causes a lot of issues in llamas and alpacas. And that's when I'm typically seeing them, but also in sheep and goats, it can too. So if the little larvae migrate and go into the spinal cord and then they get neurologic and go down. So that's something that I see a decent amount of the time when we're called. And then, yeah, other internal parasites too. So we have a lot of barber pole worm, right? So homunculus, as well as other issues, coccidia, because our climate is such that it can be wet and warm for a while during the summers. And then during the winters, if our weather cooperates, it does get cold enough, but we are having weird weather right now, and we still, even now in the middle of November, are seeing some parasite issues because the ground's not frozen yet. So that's a big thing. And then going into winter, as animals are spending more time in close proximity to each other and inside, seeing an increase in ectoparasites. So stuff like mites and lice are certainly things that always you can check for when you're doing your physical exam. And sometimes just spreading the hair back to look, you can see little lice crawling around in there. But I found that using little flea combs like you would in a cat or dog can be helpful. So now I have a couple flea combs on my truck that I can run through my patients to check to see if they've got any hitchhikers there. But yeah, that's a pretty common thing.
It's not at all a fair question that I asked, but like, okay, so say you're headed out to see an alpaca and you had to guess what it was you were seeing them for, knowing absolutely nothing else. What would you guess it was going to be?
I guess after this summer, I would be guessing that if I was getting called for a sick or down alpaca, it'd probably be P. tenuis, the meningeal worm. But I guess on that topic, I mean, there's so much to go into on all of those. We do a decent number of backyard animals. We do meningeal worm prevention. So every month we go out and we give ivermectin or doramectin injections. So that's something that we've been doing quite a bit of lately for clients who just aren't comfortable giving injections or for one way or another are not physically able to catch their animals and give them. So we help them out with that too. So I guess it's still in the realm of meningeal worm, but yeah,
Yeah, a
that's
lot,
often
a
what I
lot
see.
of parasites. Like I hear you. A lot
Yeah.
of parasites. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
oh, yes. And what about with like reproduction stuff with camelids? Any kind of common issues there?
Well, that is a whole can of worms because
The ferns.
born. Yeah, so chameleon reproduction is kind of wild in some ways. They have all these adaptations to help them live high up in the mountains of the Andes. And then, of course, we've brought them here and they're living in some different environments. So we do quite a bit of preg checks on them for breeding operations. Certainly not as much of economic thing that it was, 10, 15 years ago before the bubble burst, but we do a decent number of it. And so for ultrasound, so I have an ultrasound on my truck because we do so much dairy work and other stuff too. And so it's nice to be able to do preg checks that way because in an alpaca, I would not recommend doing a rectal with just your arm. They're just too small and too fragile. But we can slip an ultrasound probe up there with a little extender that you can make out of PVC pipe, or they have some commercially available ones too. You can scan them that way, or you can do it transabdominally. And so we do that as well. As far as reproductive issues that we see, a lot of times it's due to them not being able to be bred. And then they're pretty similar to horses, I would say, because we do a lot of horse repro work. They can get endometritis and they can have other issues too. They can be dirty. But yeah,
Can I ask, like, what kind of ultrasound do you use? Like, it's a big question in the house call world. Or do you have the whole big setup and everything like they have in the clinics?
so I have an ultrasound unit that is IMV, I believe. It's like BCF, IMV, maybe they're the same company, but it clips to my back. And so the unit itself is probably slightly smaller than like a toaster, like a toaster width, if that makes sense. And it's a little square and it fits in a pouch. and it straps I wear it around my waist, and then it's wired, and I have a little screen that sits on my wrist. And the screen is probably a little bit smaller than my iPhone. So it just velcros right to my wrist, and then I have one hand free to go in rectally or transabdominally, and I use my other arm like a watch face, basically, and I look at the ultrasound that way.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, and I have a linear probe. Some people prefer a curved probe, but I like my linear for what I do.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. I know that when people are kind of trying to decide what type of ultrasound unit to get, there are questions about what's the most durable. Because if you're working
Mhm.
wars with like a horse or a cow that could step on your unit and break it,
Yeah, yeah.
that's a real consideration. So I love that it's like literally on your body. Like if it's on your wrist, it's around your waist. That's really cool. I think
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Mhm.
I
Yeah, yeah.
knew what they were doing.
Yeah, they did. One of my coworkers has the goggles that you wear, and so when you're looking, instead of looking at her wrist, she looks right up her eyes. Don't use something like that because I do so much horse repro. I would never wear goggles if I was standing behind a horse, so I like my wrist unit, but there's just cool stuff out there.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, you definitely have to keep your wits about you when you're behind a large animal. But that's really interesting. It sounds like almost like VR or something that they're
Yeah, it kind of
like
is.
like hologram world or something. Like while you're like feel like you're literally inside the animal looking with your own eyes. I can only imagine how cool that is. It's amazing. Let's see. So if you were out to go see a goat and you had absolutely no idea, like this is a backyard goat, someone's pet,
Mhm.
okay, and you had no idea what you were seeing them for, and you had to guess what it most likely would be that you were seeing them for, what would it be?
So, great question.
It's a hard question, I know.
It is. So, everything that's in my mind is, like, everything that we've seen in the past month or so, and so, I guess what we've been seeing quite a bit of lately because our temperatures have been crazy, it's been 20 degrees at night and then up to 50, 60 during the day. I've been seeing a lot of pneumonia, so a lot of respiratory issues, especially as some animals are spending a little bit more time inside. So, yeah, I've seen a decent amount of pneumonia lately in pet goats. And then there's I guess a whole nother side shoot about medications that you can use and what's legal and what's not. But yeah, I've seen a lot of that. And then again, parasites, always parasites. In a couple of months here, we're going to be getting a ton of calls for lambings and kittings. So
Oh, little babies, they're so cute. Oh, I love it. Hey everyone, Dr. Eve Harrison here. Whether you are a solo mobile vet feeling the weight of isolation, or whether you're struggling with boundaries or issues with your current client base, or if you're in the early stages of starting your house call practice and you're struggling with analysis paralysis and decision fatigue, you're trying to get enough patients into your practice to be able to start paying your bills, or you're someone dreaming of breaking free from the corporate life or your clinic life, but you're afraid to make the leap. Well, if you're any of those things, I totally see you. I know what it's like to eat lunch in your car while catching up on charts, to question if you're charging enough, to wonder if you can really build a sustainable mobile practice without burning out, and even know what it's like to wonder if the house call practice that you've already built with your blood, sweat, and tears is something that you can even keep going with, given how burnt out you might already be. But I also know that it's possible to thrive beyond your wildest dreams as a house call vet. And I know this because I've done it. And that is why I'm so excited to announce that registration is finally open for our fourth annual House Call and Mobile Vet virtual conference. This is not just another CE event. This is your first step towards transformation. We're tackling the real challenges of mobile practice, from handling red flag clients who believe that as a house call vet, you should be available 24/7. More importantly, we're going to be sharing proven solutions that help you work less while earning more, that help you work in a way that reflects your true worth, and that helps you build a practice that fits your life. Whether you're an experienced mobile vet looking to optimize your practice or just starting to explore this path, you'll leave this conference with concrete strategies that you can implement immediately to increase both your income and your time freedom. The conference is virtual. It's February 1st and 2nd, 2025, and you can join from the coziness of your own couch while sipping hot chocolate and ordering your favorite Thai food while you're hand-fed gems of wisdom for your house call practice and while you celebrate with your tribe. Here's what two of our veteran house call and mobile vet virtual conference attendees had to say. Dr. B said, day one of the conference, and it was fantastic. Speakers discussing the nitty-gritty subjects of medicine, the down and dirty ways to treat cats who may not receive treatment otherwise, and meeting other vets willing to take back the profession. I think I have found my tribe. I think it is truly the most excited I have been at a vet conference in a long time. Thank you, Dr. Eve, for all the time and energy you put into this. I cannot wait until tomorrow. And then we have from Dr. M. What a unique and engaging conference, even better than last year, and last year was amazing. So if you're feeling excited, inspired, and ready to sign up, don't wait too long. We have an amazing price for our early bird registration. That is open only through January 1st, 2025. And the first 50 people to register will receive a special bonus package that I've personally curated to help you implement everything that you've learned. Head to my Instagram, the House Call Vet Academy, or the link in the show notes to secure your spot. I'm Dr. Eve Harrison, and I can't wait to show you just how amazing mobile practice can be with the right support and community behind you, and to celebrate with those of you who already know exactly how life-giving this path can be. Now back to our show. I would actually like to dive into some of like the medications that you use and the considerations that you have to take when you're treating some of these animals. Even if they're pets, you still have to follow the regulations like Amduca, right? Like
Yes.
stuff. I remembered the word, go me. This I know very, very little about, except when I work on the goats that I work on, I have to like look up some of that stuff and be like, okay, what is okay for me to use? I would love to hear your thoughts on that subject.
Yeah. So I'm sure for some of us, Amduca and all that stuff is a memory from lectures that we all had to take and, whatever. So, yes, because sheep, goats, commodes, all those things are livestock and are technically food animal species, you do have to follow the rules that are in place for that. So I'm sure we all remember in that list of like always, sometimes, never, right? So things that you can use. So there's the list of medications that you can never use in a food animal producing species. So, stuff like your chlorphenicals, stuff like that, or other medications that are deemed more important for human health. And again, I never use them so that they're not fresh in my mind. But yeah, so there's those medications that you're never going to be giving to a food animal species, whether they're a major or minor food animal species in the United States. And so I guess a preface for all of this is that there's a ton of information out there on the internet for treatment protocols for animals. However, we have to remember that sheep and goats are a lesser economic component in our country as compared to some other countries. So if you're just looking things up online, you might see things that are labeled for use in the UK or Ireland or Australia or New Zealand. And you have to double check and make sure that they are approved for use in the United States because it's not always the case. Even some things in Canada are not allowed here. So you have to be up to date on that. And so websites like FARAD is really great to put your requests in and look stuff up. So yeah, so that's some of the basic rules, I guess.
The website that you mentioned, what does that say? So we can put it in the show notes for me.
Yeah. So it's FARAD, which is the Food Animal Residue Avoidance Databank, is this really great website. And so it's a great thing for anyone who's going to be doing anything with any food animal species to just get familiar with, click around and look. There's all sorts of resources for extra labeled drug usage. There's this thing called VetGram where you can search medications there. And then included, everything is all together in one place. So it has things such as the list of prohibited and restricted drugs in food animal. So again, that's the thing, that's the never, right? That's the lose your license level. So things like the chloramphenicol or the clenbuterol, DES, all that stuff. That if you are looking at an animal that has a rumen and chews its cud and you're reaching for one of these medications, stop what you're doing and reassess. And then, of course, so those are your group 1 drugs. And then they have broken down to with group 2 drugs, which have the restricted use and everything is on there. So that's something that's super duper helpful. I'm looking at it right now and it's great. And you can also put in requests. So if for some reason you have a medication that has been given to a food animal and now you need to figure out what the withdrawal time is, you can put a request in and they're pretty good at getting back to you pretty quick. So Hopefully that doesn't happen, but it does. So it's good to know withdrawal times, especially if these animals are going to be entering into the food chain, or if people are drinking the milk or selling the milk or doing anything with any sort of dairy products from it. It's really important to make sure that you're not going to have any residues.
Yeah, yeah. That's fascinating. That sounds like a really, really good resource. And I feel like I almost kind of remember that website also from vet school, like,
Yeah.
and all these weird acronyms.
Yes. Uh-huh.
That's like your
Yeah.
world. Like you're on this website every day or something. You probably know it all by heart by now, but this is really, really fascinating. And I think really important information for people who are dabbling and shifting a little bit into mixed animal work.
Mhm.
I think this is just such great information. I also wanted to ask you a little bit about your home euthanasia work. Is that your own practice or is that through the ambulatory practice that you work with? Or
That's through the clinic that I work with. Yep. Yep. We do at-home euthanasias for dogs and cats, bunnies, and other random things. I think what sets us apart a little bit from some of the other places in the area that do it is that because we always have a doctor that's on call 24/7, we can do emergency at-home euthanasias or weekends or late at night, any of that stuff. So we can really work around people's schedules, which is nice if they need it. But yeah. Yep.
yeah, you guys large animal people with your on-call schedule. I haven't done on-call myself since I was in surgical residency and I didn't really like it very much. It's really interesting to kind of remember that you guys are still doing the on-call thing. What's your on-call schedule like?
So, the practice that I've been working with this whole time, we have gone between kind of back and forth with our numbers. So, usually we're between 3 and 5 veterinarians that we all split on call. And so we take turns every weeknight being on call. And that's usually for us from about 5 p.m. to about 8 a.m. the next morning. And then on weekends, we'll do Friday evening again, 5 p.m. till 8 a.m. Monday morning. And so we rotate that around too. And then our on call schedule, sometimes it'll be really, really busy and sometimes it won't be. I'm on call this weekend, so I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to knock on wood. But usually our weekends are pretty busy with emergencies and sick animals. And weeknights tend to be hit or miss.
Oh, wow. That whole lifestyle is so like I hadn't even thought about that for the longest time. So it's
Yeah.
hear about it. There was a time I
Yeah.
remember when I started out, I found it very exciting to get called in for an emergency. It makes you feel really like important and needed, and you are. And after a while, I was just like, "F this."
No, I 100% agree. It's tough, right? Because it's so hard. For me, the hardest is when I am just falling asleep and I'm just starting to dream or something, and then I get called, I get jolted awake, and my husband could sleep through an avalanche probably. So he doesn't even know that I get up and go. I just started leaving him a note. I'll be home at this time. I'm going to here. But yeah, so there's no better feeling in the world for me personally, I guess, getting called out in the middle of the night, you're tired and you're messy, but you got the calf out and they're both alive and they're looking at you and the farmer's so happy and thankful. And that's the best feeling in the world. But yeah, there's definitely some nights, 2 o'clock in the morning, dodging deer. I'd rather be in my bed, but
Well, thank you for what you do. The people who do emergency work, on-call work of any kind, I have so much respect and gratitude because I don't wanna do it myself, and I know that work is so important and so needed and so valuable, and I love that you get that reward afterwards, and it feels worth it to you because it is, it's amazing, so thank you. Thank you for call for service. Amazing. So, I was curious to hear how your euthanasias go. Do you go solo? Do you have a tech there, or what's your workflow like when you're doing the in-home end-of-life care?
yeah, yeah. So again, we do not have any techs or any assistants that are with us most of the time. Sometimes we do have some students or veterinary students that ride along with us. And whenever I have them, I absolutely utilize them. But oftentimes it's just me and the owner, the family. So I have it set up that if for some reason the owner does not want to be present during any part of it, they can step away. So I usually go in and we give the whole discussion. But yeah, I really do like doing the at-home euthanasias. It's so different than what I do. I mean, a lot of times I'm bringing life into the world if I'm there for foalings or kiddings or calvings, and it's the other end of it. but it can be just as beautiful. And I like being there to be able to support, the family and be with them in it. So I do like it. Again, it's very different than what I do from a day-to-day basis, but it's nice. And then from a technical standpoint or from a medical standpoint, it's pretty low input. I just have to have a little bag of stuff versus my entire big boxes of things that I lug around. So that's nice too. But yeah, I've been inside, I guess, a lot of different people's homes and houses and seen all sorts of things that I feel like you only really get if you're doing the at-home euthanasias or if you're going into their home and doing their wellness care or whatever else that you do. It's a whole different vibe. But yeah.
Totally different vibe. Yeah. And I really love that a lot of people who do end of life care are really on that end of the spectrum or that end of the circle of life, literally. And I love how you have both bringing life into the world and helping to usher into the next. And I think that sounds like such a beautiful combination. I personally am. This is another one of those situations where I'm very grateful for people who are doing end of life care because a few years ago decided to stop offering that myself just because my patients are so close to me. My practice is so intimate that it's a little too close for me at this point. You know, and these animals really feel like mine and I lose my shit. So at this point, I always refer out for in-home euthanasia services for my patients. And often I'll show up, I'll be there with them, grieving in my way,
Wow.
like to just take the pressure off of me to perform while I'm in that emotional state with these patients of mine. And I'm just so grateful for the vets locally who do that for my patients and just who are able to do it in general. And I always think it's so much to hold. And I think it's really beautiful that you're able to really experience the whole circle of life. There's something really, really meaningful about that and special.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I guess I come from a place of, I don't want to say that I'm not really quite sure what the word is, but I can see why it would be a lot harder to perform that service if you've been the one that's been taking care of them since they're a puppy. Typically, the ones that I'm doing, I don't have that same, I'm not the one that was doing their annual exams and seen them grow up and seen them grow old. So it's definitely different. But yeah, I think if I was in your position, it would be tough. And even having not really known them, sometimes, you feel your eyes welling up a little bit just because there's so much emotion there. And yeah, to have that really deep connection with them, I'm sure is tough.
Yeah, it really is. And like, I kind of made peace with the fact that it's actually okay to cry during euthanasia, even if you don't know the animal. Like, it turns out that it means a lot to people to see that you care and you feel with them and you're not numb. You're not a numb machine just coming in to like Grim Reaper the whole thing, you
Yeah.
know? Like,
Yeah.
but anyway, thank you so much for sharing your experiences with that part of ambulatory work that you do. And from here, I was just kind of curious, kind of open ended. Is there anything else that you think might be helpful for people who may be getting started with ambulatory or mobile practice, or who maybe a recent graduate who's thinking of going into this type of work? What might you have done differently looking back, or what went well that you could share with people?
Mhm. So I guess, yeah, there's so much to it. And I find, I guess I'll lead with clients that tend to get backyard pet animals, tend to not be from agricultural backgrounds, I have found. And so for some of them, this is their first foray into the livestock world. And so there's so much education that can be done for clients. And again, in order to be able to do that, it's good to, you yourself as a veterinarian to have a basic knowledge of husbandry and nutrition and things like that. And so one thing that we as a practice found really helpful is we basically made a handout that we give to all of our clients and we call it like our goats 101. And so all that stuff, it has pictures and a list of poisonous plants because people say it's easier to build a fence to keep a goat out than in or something like that. So goats will escape and they will inevitably go over to your garden and start munching on things. So it's a really good idea to have a list of poisonous and toxic plants. At least around here, like rhododendron's a huge problem because everyone has it because it's gorgeous, but goats love to eat it and they should not. They get very sick off of it, vomit. So included in that. So we have lists of poisonous plants. We have pictures about body condition scoring and FAMACHA scoring and how to properly trim hooves. And then we have other information too on some common emergencies. So like grain overload slash bloat or male goat urinary blockages. And then a whole section on parasites, of course. And so something like that is super duper helpful. And that way we just have it printed out and on the trucks. And then if we go somewhere for the first time, we just hand it to them and they can look through it on their own time. But we go through it. What else? I guess other random things. So I was always told in vet school by Dr. Mary Smith, who had the textbook too. So that's another good one to check out. I think it's called Goat Medicine. She always told us friends don't let friends get male goats because they just have a million and one problems. Castrated males oftentimes do get urinary blockages. And those, of course, are life threatening, just like in a cat. And you can try to relieve the blockage in the field. And we do, and we use a combination of medications as well as amputating the vermiform appendage at the tip.
Fizzle.
Yep.
Yeah. Right on. Dreaded that. I was like, please, nobody ever put me in a situation where I have to do that.
I hate to say it, but if you're going to be working on male goats, there's probably a time when you'll have stuff like that. And so much of that is nutrition. So making sure that they're not eating grain and they're not really eating anything other than refuges and getting plenty of water and all that good stuff. So yeah, friends that let friends get male goats. But everyone has male goats as pets because the little wethers, because at least around here, the dairies don't really need them and they're adorable and they're cute and people get them. And then you just have to be really careful about management and husbandry with them. So that's something that's really important too. But yeah, we go over a lot of basic stuff. Another thing that we as a practice have found is that a lot of people who are new to the backyard sheep or goats often will call looking basically for free advice. And so it's really important, of course, to have your receptionist to yourself, have something set up for what you're going to tell these people. It's a little bit easier now, as of last year, we can't just give out antibiotics to anyone. They can't go buy antibiotics over at Tractor Supply. So, they need to establish a VPCR and get on farm. And then we have these discussions about husbandry and stuff. But yeah, a lot of people call looking for advice and, it's something we can't always accommodate. But I think it's great that these people are looking to veterinarians for advice rather than looking on the Facebook groups because a lot of people still do, but it's good for them to.
That's a really beautiful point. Like we're talking about boundaries, but we're also talking about a shift in our clients actually trusting us enough to come to us. Even we have a little bit of a challenge where they expect things to be free, but hey, the first is them coming to us to begin with rather than like asking the entire Dr. Google for everything, right?
Yes.
So that's really fascinating. Yeah.
And I guess to that point, so now I guess everyone's probably seen it when you Google and then like the AI thing pops up. Now, I guess there was a study showed that something like 80% of people no longer are like actually click on articles. They're just reading what AI said. And so I did a little test and I asked ChatGPT something about a goat. Like, what do I do if my goat has coccidia? And the results that it gave me, the medications that it gave me are illegal for use in the United States. So it was like use Totazodril, which is not allowed, and people are getting it on Facebook and getting it illegally. So then I think I typed back, I was like, isn't that illegal in the United States? And it was like, yes, you are correct. I'm like, oh, brother. Because that's the thing, because if you don't know any better and you just type it in and it pops up, okay, then you're going to go get it. So I think we have to be really careful about being able to provide good information for our clients. Otherwise, they're going to see crazy things from the AI that's out there.
Dude, this is so fast. I mean, these are such wonderful tips. Thank you so much for this. When you mentioned Chat GPT, it reminded me of something that I'm still pissed about. But my sister one time, asked me for some advice about her cat. And I was like, give me a minute. I just need to like look it up. And she's like, it's okay. I'll just ask Chat GPT. And I'm like, are you effing kidding me right now? You think me right now. You don't trust me. You won't give me a minute to like get you a proper answer, and you're going to try and ask Chat GPT that's going to give you some illegal nonsense. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even my own sister, she should know better, but that's a whole other can of worms. Speaking of worms, again, we really circled back to the are. Anyway, thank you so much for your insight and for sharing your experiences and veterinary knowledge and information. I'm loving what you do. Thank you for all you do. And I can tell you working really hard to get all these animals cared for really well. So I really appreciate your time, and I'm excited to stay in touch so I can ask you our animal question.
Yeah, I welcome them.
Amazing. I may have a duck question coming soon after we record.
Oh, I love ducks. So
Amazing. Amazing. Well, thank you so much.
yeah, of course.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the House Call Vet Cafe. If you enjoyed this episode, then hit the subscribe or follow button on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never have to miss an episode. This podcast is made specifically for you, so don't be shy if you'd like to reach out and let me know your thoughts on this episode. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook as the House Call Vet Academy, where I also share more valuable content. If you're interested in learning more about consulting for House Call Vets or the House Call Vet Academy online course and community, please click on the link in the show notes. Have an amazing rest of your day, and I can't wait for you to join us for our next episode of the House Call Vet Cafe.